as I said, today's session is a little bit different from normal, because normally I just allow open-ended questions, but I thought this would be somewhat interesting to see. How is your experience? You can still ask the questions that you have, but I'm trying to encourage you to relate it more to your own direct felt experience of life, because that's really where the power will be found from these types of teachings.
Yeah, hiya. Yeah, what I'm thinking is I've recently joined a 12-week Buddhist course. It was 2 weeks ago in Sheffield. And I'm finding since that couple of weeks that, you know, they give us homework to do, so to speak, and encourage us to do direct experience and to know direct experience, etc. And I've been feeling that my perceptions have been, because I like to experiment anyway, and I like to experiment with different things. And I've been speaking to a lot of different people and surrounding myself with lots of different people, more so the last couple of weeks than I have, for example, in the last like sort of year and a half, in which I discovered like sort of direct perception and through Eckhart Tolle, Muji, etc. So I'm surrounding myself more with people, including this satsang, talking to people. I'm coming out of, not coming out, but just surrounding myself with others that are of the same, you know, have the same like sort of quest or ilk or whatever. So, yeah. And I found that I found an expansion within myself of space,
Right.
and a more, I've always been a social guy anyway, but it's like to me, I can only describe it as an expansion of space within me and also without. So, you know, whenever I look out into the horizon or go into the park or whatever, it seems bigger, but it also seems, rather than me going, oh, it's amazing, I would say like, so it's a natural part of me. I'll see a beautiful sunset. It's a natural part of me, and I'll just rest in that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what the experience is. It's more and more the appearances are included as you, and when they are you, something changes in your relationship to them. There's less tension both ways. Excuse me. From avoiding experience and yearning after experience. So desire and aversion begins to subside to a degree, and they are impediments to happiness. Aversion is, I don't want this, which means that I don't want what could be coming or what's here right now. And desire is, I still don't want what's here, I want that. And when you see that whatever you're desiring is an appearance of your own nature, it still has an allure, but it's significantly reduced, because through the power of insight, you understand what it is. You know, we could use anything. We could use a cake. You know, people like cake, right? But when you recognize that the appearance is born of pure space, it's a rendition of the dynamic energy of pure space appearing as this object.
Yeah.
And that makes it less enticing, but you can still enjoy it. It's not like you never eat it again. It's just the pull goes away. Same with things that you would generally avoid, particularly people. We all know difficult people, but you find that when you allow things to be as they are, this tendency to avoid someone that feels uncomfortable often turns into compassion, right? Because it's a form of self-compassion, because the person is included in your experience of self. they're also a part of you. And again, it doesn't mean you're going to spend all day hanging out with someone that you don't like, right? It's not that we become martyrs or become abstainers. I'm never eating cake again, and I'm always going to hang about with people that I don't like, which would be silly. It's not a test or competition. We just start to notice this innate peace or increased peace around individual circumstances as they appear. And the way you was describing the park and the vista, it reminds me a bit when I first read The Power of Now, which was actually when it came out.
Yes.
I think close when it came out, like the very first part of that book, and he says the trees were luminous, and I read it. I said, mate, where's the bit before? Like he started at the awakening, and I wanted to know more.
Right, I see. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But the point is not to share that. The point is that's what tends to happen, and it also doesn't mean that you're always perceiving everything as bliss, right? That would be artificial and somewhat unlikely, because everything's always changing. So the happiness that I'm referring to, which is a Western word, is really trying to describe Ananda, which is a Sanskrit word, which translates into bliss, which is ineffective, because when we think of bliss, we think of a very high state. But Ananda really would be more accurate to describe it as perpetual contentment in all circumstance. You know, you have a good evening, it's content. You have a bad evening, it's content. A problem occurs, it's content. You don't stray as far from your seat of stability. And over time, this sense of stability becomes what happiness is defined as an or not completely unshakable, but a near unshakable sense of well-being in all circumstances, even if you're suffering, right? So if there's no self and no other, and you have a flu with the headache, and you're lying in bed and it's excruciating and you feel miserable, that can be appearing whilst you're also free of it.
Yeah. I've been looking to settle into that type of way. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm going through horrendous personal circumstances at the moment. What would you call horrendous? You know what I mean? In a duality type of way, but it's just like but this is happening what I described, partly because of these circumstances, because I'm reacting the right way through certain teachings, including yourself, of direct experience, because I'm used to doing transcendental meditation twice a day, right? So, which is great, you know what I mean? Meditation's great and it has its place, but it's just like what they believe is that you should just do in transcendental meditation and the Maharishi is that you should just do it twice a day and then let it just organically go, you know what I mean? And organically happen, that state of mind in everyday life, which for me is just like it didn't really work for me over about a year or so. So don't get me wrong, it gives me lots of energy and it improves my clarity in things. However, it's not, I needed this type of thing, you know, like sort of as in, you know, the Tibetan experience, the direct experience, what was it, the Zog, the Dogbas? Dzogchen, etc. I needed to practice that more, you know what I mean, in an everyday way, and be conscious of it rather than the transcendental meditation way of saying, okay, let it just happen organically. Don't even consciously try to do this every moment. Do you know what I'm saying?
I understand. Yeah, completely. So when I first started looking at the nature of mind, I couldn't meditate. I was unable to sit still.
Well, I've got ADHD as well, but I was diagnosed last year.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
you know, and I had I had a lot of trauma going on in my body and my mind, and I felt in a pretty bad way. And the meditative path just wasn't available to me. And there's a lot of people who are like that, who just don't have even the capacity to even begin a meditation practice. Often, you know, it's said that it's better nowadays because they suggest you sit in a chair. But at that time, I was about 340 pounds and I couldn't even sit cross-legged. I used to sit with my knees up, and it was just, the whole thing was just a very challenging experience. But fortunately, awakening is an equal opportunity experience, and it doesn't actually require meditation to awake. Meditation is very useful in terms of working on your causes and conditions, right? So if you have a very active mind, or you have some other experiences that can feel quite challenging, like lack of concentration or focus, the meditation that's taught generally can help with that.
That's how it helped me. Yeah.
It does help. But awakening is only about insight.
Yeah.
Awakening has nothing to do with meditation. It's insight into the nature of mind. And it can't be put any simpler than that. Insight into the nature of mind. And what I suspect, because I started meditating after I was on this quite well into my own realizations. And I imagine that when sages in India woke up, they naturally started becoming more meditative. And then someone took notes and said, "Oh, this is what we need to do.
Right, yeah,
We need to be more meditative," which is kind of can help. And then Buddhism really goes deep into that, but it's got nothing to do with this. The reason why I started today's session a bit differently with the topic of happiness is because I describe the greatest accomplishment of this journey, for want of a better word, is you are at ease with all experience. That is the most simple definition of enlightenment. You are at ease with all experience. As it arises, you are at ease during the arising. As it abides, you are at ease during the abiding. And as it subsides, you are at ease during the subsiding. But it's not because you're forcing ease. It's because you have the insight that whatever's arising is your own nature. So you're just watching the arising, and whatever abides is your own nature. It's the dynamic energy of the absolute that you are. And whatever subsides, it subsides as the absolute, and it leaves no trace, like a bird flying through the sky, or a finger drawing water. It doesn't leave a trace. It's very apparent and very vivid, whatever is appearing, but it arises, abides, and subsides, and leaves no trace. And the reason why the practice that I share is to leave things as they are, because it is only by not engaging in the appearances that you get to see that they arise, abide, and subside. Because if you don't, if you get involved in them, you perpetuate them as something else. So Mark walks into the office, he's got his loud headphones on again, and it's really annoying. So rather than just realizing that it's just the appearance of mind, you go, "Mark, turn your bloody headphones down," or whatever. Now you're creating, you're making everything reified, which means to make it solid.
Yeah.
So it's like grabbing clouds out of the sky and making them into a thing made of cotton. It's a pretty bad analogy, but you're picking up things and making them real by engaging in them, because only you as the absolute has always the capacity to make things real. If you decide that your parking ticket is the worst thing that's ever happened to you ever, it is. Like, you make it real. Or if you decide,
I've got a mate like that. Yeah, he's absolutely, everything is a disaster. So I wish everybody's got a mate like that.
Or everything's brilliant.
Yeah,
there's that great little
Paul Whitehouse. Is it?
There's a little story of a monk living in a village, and a young woman gets pregnant by her boyfriend, but doesn't want her father to know. So when he finds her with the baby, she says it's the monk. The monk did it. So all the villagers go up to the monk's house on the hill with this baby, carrying pitchforks, and they say, "This is your baby. You've got to look after the baby now for all of its life." And he says, "Is that so?" And he takes the baby in. And then a year later or 2 years go by, and the woman eventually confesses that it was her boyfriend who got her pregnant. And all the villagers go up to the monk's house and say, "We're really sorry, but we want the baby back." And he gives the baby back, and he says, "Is that so?" It's just, we always have a choice. And I know that there isn't really anyone choosing, but I try to avoid that type of language during these calls. It's useful sometimes, but not always. So we do have a choice. Do we want to reify all the experiences in our life and make them into things? Or do we want to let them be the nature of experience, and we enjoy them as they are without attachment? Because why would you want to attach yourself to yourself? You see, so that's the way I look at it. Yeah, good. So as I said, it's a little bit different this week. We're seeing what people's understanding of anybody else.
Thanks for that. Yeah, that's good.
So if anyone wants to share, you can raise your hand, and if not, I'm going to talk to whoever wants to talk to me, because that's how this works. So in my own experience, and this is something as well that's rarely talked about in these circles, and that is the effect your causes and conditions have on your own awakening. I'll get to you in 1 second, Laura. Thank you for raising your hand. So if you look into the world, you see quite a lot of teachers that, and I don't mean this with any disrespect whatsoever, quite a few teachers, some of the like recent modern teachers, they tend to come from what I can see anyway, experiences that seem somewhat average. If you look at people like Rupert Spear, Eckhart Tolle, etc., they seem quite well adjusted to a degree before the awakening, right? So when you awaken and you're already quite well adjusted in life, it's much easier for you to bear that awakening in your activities, because there isn't so much of causes and conditions that are very detrimental to overcome. So the awakening can feel simultaneous to the liberation, right? But actually, the more causes and conditions you've got that are detrimental, like trauma, histories of abuse, addiction, anger, violent background, what we might call childhood trauma, when you awakening is insight. You see clearly that you've never suffered. But that doesn't mean all your weird ways of being don't evaporate overnight. So then you spend some time applying these teachings to your behavior. And this is where the real work is done. And I know that people in the non-dual circles want to assume that you just awaken overnight, but I don't know many people that are in non-duality teachings that also feel completely free. They still feel frustrated. They still feel angry. They still feel alone. It's all softer. It's all softer. It's all more manageable. There's a sort of glow that's emerging. But those causes and conditions, if they're very, very dense, then it does take time for those to dissolve. It's like an iceberg in the ocean. The iceberg is made of water. Your causes and conditions are made of consciousness. It's in a different mode, right? It's the same stuff, but it's very dense. So by definition, an iceberg and water is all water, but the experience is one's really hard and one is very fluid. And then when you put the sun of awareness, the warm sun of awareness on the iceberg, it melts and it aligns with the water. And this is what happens with your own character, personality, propensity to argue, any aggression that you have, any greed, any things that you've had. You're still awake, like you're free of it. You can see it's just the appearances of self. I let it be as it is. Anger arises, abides, subsides. But ultimately, you want all of that to dissolve into just pure beingness, because it is pure beingness, but you want to experience it. And you do that by observing it, being with it without reacting. And it's the non-reaction to your own impulses, whatever they may be, that clarifies them as empty and allows the wisdom of your awakening to percolate into your activities, into your relationships, and into how you show up in the world. And this isn't talked about a lot. It's almost like awakening is that. No, it's not. No, it's not. I grew up in a very difficult background, on the streets, in urban gangs, lots of violent tendencies, inabilities to socialize or function in a normal society. And all of that had to become bathed in the light of my own awareness and dissolve. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be doing what I'm doing now. So give yourself the grace to allow yourself to be awake, and also know that just by bathing yourself in this understanding, it will help go to what I call liberation, which is the resolution of the actual tendency. This is something that Ramana Maharshi talked about, but it was removed by Papaji, not in a bad way. He just removed it and started talking about you're awake now, just be quiet. Where Ramana Maharshi was always about, he called them vasanas, the vasanas, which is the mental, emotional traces that go back to, he goes, you have to dissolve the vasanas in your practice, and that somehow got left out. So that's why I bring that up occasionally.